team.
Hello there, this is Malorian. This will be another Orc Tactical team, and this is another question coming from the Google Plus group, the YouTube Battle Reporters, and this one here is going to be from John Ryan. And what he is asking here is also, well, he asked one other question, but this one, the second part here is one I really want to focus on because it's something that's kind of like near and dear to my heart. And it says, maybe an objective look at the reasons behind the effects of and alternatives to comping tournaments. So this is really something because, I mean, not only am I a tournament player and I go to all these things, I'm also part of the tournament organizer group for Alberta. I run my own tournaments, and because we've now made up a circuit, we have a lot of talks, especially since we're now done the first year of the circuit and going to the second. This is really starting to come up, and especially in my mind, you know, how can things change, blah, blah, blah. And so the whole idea of comping and its effects and the alternative, that's really a big thing I've been thinking of lately. So let's just get into it. There really is 3 reasons why people put comp into their events. The first one is they believe that GW got it wrong. Like, know what? This army is stronger than this army, or you know what? This item here is stronger than what should be, and it just isn't fair. So either we need a system where we can ban certain items, or, you know, you can pick 2 out of 3, or that, you know, there's a score and we'll be pairing you up based off your comp score, or your comp score goes towards your overall. There's so many different ways to comp it, but the basic premise of that first one is that, you know what, this isn't fair and a person shouldn't be winning just because they have this. So that's that one reason. The second reason is, you know what, this thing here does not make for a good game. What they're more after is that everything should be kind of set up to have like a good challenging game, and if someone is just, say, squirreled away in a folding fortress, or they're just sitting back with a gun line, or whatever it is, that just doesn't make for good Warhammer, and they want to avoid that. They're doing it maybe not so much to make it even as far as the power goes, but this is more making it even so that you're playing the same type of game. They're really trying to get rid of like the cagey elements of the game. So that's another reason why they have that comp. The third one is they just want things to be different. You know, especially if you're in an area that has a lot of different tournaments, people might just put in some comp just so it's completely different, right? Like, guess what? You know, we always play by the book. Let's try ETC. Just really so that, you know, people are bringing out different lists. Because you know what? If you're playing Warhammer all the time, you start seeing people bringing the same basic lists all the time, unless they have comp that forces them to go outside their element and go that way, right? And try like, okay, well, I can't take this time, so hey, why don't I take this time? So those are all the 3 different reasons, and I think the best thing that we need to start off with is that all these 3 are starting with the best intentions. These are tournament organizers going in there, trying to make it so that their event will be fair and will be fun and interesting. So that's really the idea behind it. Now, something else you should really look at is there's almost kind of like a 4th element, or it's almost kind of like interplayed with all these, because there really is 2 real ways to comp your tournaments, and a lot of people don't always understand this, especially if they aren't really being the organizer, or if they haven't really looked into the way that the system of the tournament affects the list. And that is, not only is there like the written comp of this is what you have and this is what the points is, there's also the scenarios. Scenarios play almost as like a secondary comp. And what you can have is, you know what, if I want to make sure that I'm seeing too many gun lines, guess what? There's going to be a lot of missions where you have to go to the center. Hey, am I seeing a lot of monsters? Well, okay, then I'm going to be doing something where, you know, I'm going to have it so you have to get into this tower. Or all of a sudden, you know, maybe I'm going to be mixing things up so that your general won't be near these monsters. Whatever else they have, you know, this can really be meta dependent, where this is, I mean, like I said, this can be going into these things to try and even these out. Like, you know what, okay, you know what, there's a couple armies here that are really crazy going over the board with the magic phase, so you know what, this will be a scenario that really plays with the way that magic works and is really going to even it out. So if you have somebody that's going to get like tons of magic and normally cast tons of powerful spells, this will counter this. Or for the one where normally they go cagey, okay, well maybe for this one here, we really want to avoid all these real buff spells. So you know what? You just somehow this scenario changes the way that hexes and augments work so that there's not going to be the big, okay, you're -2 toughness and I'm +4 toughness or whatever it is, right? Maybe it's like that. Or maybe it's something for just for more fun where, magic is now just done crazy. It's like, okay, everybody gets a wizard hat. That's actually a scenario I ran once where every general gets a wizard hat for free. But anyway, we're not talking about that. Now, the fourth way here too is as well is, maybe it's like a special thing with the meta where, in your area, this is really prevalent. And you know what? We just want to have something there to kind of really curve this. Now, getting back to what the real core of this question was is, I'm just trying to get his name here. John Ryan was also asking, what's the effects and the alternatives? And really, the effects are really quite clear. If you are really worried that the person's going to come in there with the pendant and he's just going to be like gumming stuff up, guess what? All of a sudden that's banned. That's not an issue. If you're worried about things being cagey because there's the folding fortress, it's banned. It's not an issue. So the real effect is that no matter which way you're doing this, you're altering the way that people have to make their lists. And a big thing too you have to understand is that usually people will look at this top and say, this is going to be the top stuff that wins just because it's better or whatever, and I'm going to change that. And so sometimes the hope is that everything is now even, and so everyone has a fair chance. But the other thing is that sometimes if you just take that top and make it impossible, the list just shifts up, and now this is the best. And this is where you really get to this slippery slope. And one of the biggest things you have to kind of watch for in this is the whole idea that the tournament organizer can be really held accountable for who wins the tournament. It can be a thing like, well, you know what? This guy just won because your comp pack or your scenarios really favored that type of army. Or it can even be worse where, you know what? You just made this so that your friends list would be better. Or maybe you play in your own tournament. So, you just did this in your tournament so that your army would be better. And man, that is such a slippery slope, and you really have to watch out for it. I know for myself, whenever I go into tournaments, I just say right off the bat, hey guys, I'm only in here as like in the fill-in guy if we have like an odd numbers, and I just can't win. I'm not allowed to win. So that's just totally off the table. But there's other guys where, maybe it's a group, right? A club is running a tournament. And so you can't really get away from that, even if just these two guys are running the event and the other, however many there could be are in the event, hey, maybe they're being blamed that you're doing this to make those guys better. So like I said, it's really slippery. And the other thing you really open up here too is he was asking about what the alternatives is, and there's lots of alternatives. We've all seen like the ETC comp. We've seen there's so many different comps out there, and you really start asking, well, which one's the best? And it really depends on what you're trying to change and what you're supposed to trying to make happen in your tournament. Are you trying to really make it so that, this one power build is eliminated, or are you just trying to change things and make people take different builds? It all really depends on what you're really after. It's even the same way where you can almost be comping through the way that you actually go and score your tournaments, right? We talked about this before, where if you go with the 20-0 system, all of a sudden people have to take armies that are very aggressive and don't give up many points at all. Whereas opposed to if you're playing one where you just need, it's win-loss and you just need a 100-point difference, well, running around what else can work, right? Plink off 100 points, okay, I got the win. So there's all these different ways that really are comp, even if they're not traditionally called comp, and are going to be affecting the way that the tournament is run. So I guess, I'm trying to stay objective. Obviously, I have my feelings towards this, but one of the things that you really start seeing is that you have to always ask yourself, is what I'm trying to change really going to change what I want to change? And if I just leave it the same, is it actually fine? So one of the things I'm going to be saying here is for that first one, where things are just broken and we need to get rid of them. Well, a really awesome thing we're starting to see here with Warhammer in 8th edition with all the new books is it is really balanced now. I mean, we still have a few of the older books, a few little things in there, but you know what? For the most part, the playing field has been very much evened. If you look back and you look at some posts talking about seventh edition and talking about tiers, it's like, well, man, you know what? These three armies are the best armies, and these armies here are just garbage. And I guess these ones are kind of in the middle, but even if you really look at the tournament breakdown, they usually spread out to be here, and you really got into this tier system. If you start looking at the armies now in 8th edition, man, you could still kind of say maybe tiers, but for the most part, the playing field is completely closer than it used to be. I guess stratified would be the right question, where before, you had this massive variance between all the different armies. And now you might still have, you could argue that there's tiers, but man, it is really close together now and very balanced. And the thing could be like, you know what? Maybe when these guys were doing all these ETC and these hard comp, maybe it's back in the days where you had things like the Demons of Chaos army, which was dominating the tournaments, or you had the Vampire counts, which were dominating with the Magic phase, or the Dark Elves, who were also dominating with their Magic phases and also their Hatred ability and also their Penance, right? So these things back there were dominating, or even just more recently like the Lizardmen dominating with their Magic phases. But what did GW do? They went and corrected those things. The Demon Book is now more in the middle, or even more like slightly down from middle. But the main idea is, whereas they used to be star high, now they're more there in the middle. Same thing with the Lizardmen. They used to be more, like people would say, either in the top tier or like the second tier. Now they're right there in the middle, right? Everything is being brought together. And so you really have to ask yourself, if you're a person who has this idea that, you know what, GW has it wrong, and I need to put in a set of comp in order to even the playing field, you have to really ask yourself, maybe the playing field is a lot more even now, and that's not really an issue anymore. Now, the next one here is talking about stagnant play. Are you really going to be seeing this stagnant play in defensive and all this stuff? Well, you do have ways of correcting that. Like I said, one of the ways of doing that is having scenarios that forces you to go to the center. So you know what? You can't just sit back there with your gun line or your folding fortress. You have to get up there. Maybe the mission is you have to get the flag from the other side, or whatever it is. Or maybe it's a system where you got something where, it's like the 20-0 system. So if you want to sit back and be defensive and shoot off a couple of things, well, great. You just got the one, but you just scored yourself like a 12-8, and the guy that actually went aggressive got 20-0, and he's going to be way higher than you. Now, again, asking yourself, is this really needed? Because if you just took the main rule book and ran those missions, well, all of a sudden you have things like the Watchtower, which is going to force you to move up. And again, I mean, we're not going to get into Watchtower, but it's things like that which really say, like, you know what, well, damn, if this is, like, let's say a 5-game tournament, there's a good chance it'll be Watchtower. I just can't run this type of list because I'll be guaranteed to lose. I have to run something that's going to be moving up, right? That's just the way it is. Same thing as if you're trying to say, like, you know what, if you're playing up against the I guess it's more going for like that fourth one, you're trying to stop the meta. Man, there's just so many Warriors of Chaos in. They're all just having these one demon princes that are flying around and blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? This is where Blood and Glory comes in. You start seeing these guys being shot down, or the Watchtower, and also they don't look so awesome anymore. So again, if you just run things by the book and maybe just do your scoring right, so that, okay, it's not just win-loss, you can't just sit back there, it's going to be a real gradient, so you really want to be aggressive and actually get out there. You can do this and all of a sudden make those changes without saying, you know what, okay, you can only take 2 war machines, or you can only have up to 20 models that can shoot, or whatever you want to do, right? Is that really needed? The last one there, just changing things to make it different. You know what? That one I can't really blame people for. There are some people here that say, hey, you know what? I'm going to bring in this comp. And I go into my defense of like, oh, you don't really need this, blah, blah. But then the counter is, you know what? Malorian, your tournament Orcs and Goblins is pretty standard. It'd be nice if you were able to bring out something different. You know what? That's totally legit. The only times where this is maybe not the case is when you start seeing it too prevalent. We're almost seeing that in our area now, where everybody doesn't want to run a standard tournament. So everything is a little bit different, These guys do this and these guys change this. My thing is I have my Battle of the Beasts where you can give your Lord any single monster you want, right? If you want to put your vampire on a giant, right, that's my thing. But you know what? Everybody has their thing. And all of a sudden you get to the point where, you know what? Everybody's running their crazy thing here, and it's almost would be nice just to get back and get some regular Warhammer in. And it's one of those things where you want the tournament to be special, you want it to be different, but at the same time, sometimes you just need those tournaments. So, we're in here, it's by the book, let's see who's the best, right? You can still have on the side your painting awards, your sportsmanship awards, the way that it goes together for best overall, but sometimes you just need that to pull together and say it's not wacky time, it's tournament time. And there's pros and cons for both. So, that's really all I can say there for those. So, really, in the long run, what I'm trying to say here is that there is many ways to comp. I'm starting to see the ones where it's like just the hard comp saying like, you know what, this is bad and this is just not going to work, so we just have to ban these things. I'm starting to seeing those as, they're just not necessary anymore. That idea of it's just not 8th edition. They've changed enough those books that everything is pretty much leveled and everything is fine. The next thing to be looking at here is, well, okay, you could be making your small changes. Now, one of the things that you have to also kind of watch out for some of these things is, like I was saying, you can have the kind of comp where it's like, okay, we're going to give you so many points for this. So as you go through and you can take whatever choices you want, there'll be this running total that you're adding up. Right now, the name's not coming to me. It's not called like Southwest. I don't know what it's called. But you basically, for every option you take, you get this extra points. And if you take multiple options or based on the sides, it's more points. And depending on what that is, that gives you that comp score. And what that comp score does at the end, it says how you're matched up for the first couple of games. And so the real idea there is that if you have this like, hey, I'm an easy list, that means you're up against easier players. So if you're this person who's a strong tactical person, you can go into these games and it's not like you're going to be up against the hardest, craziest list. You're going to be up something that's going to be nice and even and fun. And there you go, you do those, and at the end of the day, you still have your hard games. Well, you can even break those systems and say like, well, what the hell? Just take your hardest lists. There's a good chance that other people are not going to take their hardest lists. So when they pair you up, they have to drop you down several brackets. You're going to crush those guys. And at the very worst, you're going to be paired up with people that are even. And in those last games where then, if you're a person who's going towards winning the tournament and you're winning your games anyway, and you'll be up against these hardest opponents, well then at that point, you're still at an even end, as opposed to the guy that took the softest list he could, so he could then get those soft games for the first couple, and then all of a sudden he has a soft list, he's up against the really tough list, right? Those things just don't really work that well. So take a look at your comp, decide what it's going to do, see how it's going to change who's going to win the tournament. Because that's the thing too, right? When you set these comps in place, you are changing who is going to win that tournament. Because, something you have to also keep in mind here as well is that when people go into the tournament, some people don't care about reading the comp. They say, you know what, this is my army. I do not own any other army. I own maybe 3,000 points. So when I go to this 2,500 point tournament, I still have to take the same thing. I might have a few changes, but guess what? This is my army. So hey, you made this comp? Great, I'm screwed. Okay, whatever, I just lose this tournament. Oh, you went with this comp? Okay, great, I'm going to do fantastic. So you really have to go and keep that in mind. And again, at the end of the day, the very easiest thing you can say, no comp. We're going to be playing by the book. You can take whatever is allowed in your book. We're going to be playing the regular missions because 1, 8th edition is more balanced. 2, the scenarios are set up to already be doing the comping as well. And then 3, there's no way they can be blaming you for saying, hey, I'm trying to bias this, I'm trying to bias that. We're just playing Warhammer, folks. And the only thing that really is up to you at that point is how you're going to be scoring things and saying, like, if it's a massacre, it's worth this many points, or however you're going to be doing that part. That's really the only thing that's left up to you. But there you have it. I would love to see all your comments on this. I know there's different people that are very passionate on the different comps. These are my feelings. I'd love to know yours. And either way, thanks for watching. Bye.